In ancient prayers, a name was heard that still causes a shudder in those who pronounce it: Saint Cyprian, a saint of great renown. But before being a saint, he was a magician, a sorcerer, and a lord of forbidden secrets. He was born in Antioch, a city steeped in mystery, in an age when the gods still disputed the souls of men. Cyprian came into the world in the 3rd century under the Roman Empire, and from childhood he was entrusted to pagan temples to be instructed in everything a man should not know. He knew neither rest nor innocence. His childhood dissolved among ancient scrolls, symbols that glowed in the firelight, and priests who spoke with entities that did not belong to this world. Cyprian was born in Antioch, Syria, one of the most splendid cities in the Roman East. He was the son of a high-ranking pagan family, possibly descended from Phoenician priests. From birth, he was dedicated to the service of the ancient gods. His destiny was decided before he spoke. He would be a man devoted to occult knowledge. As a child, he was taken to the Temple of Apollo, where the priests educated him in astronomy, sacred arithmetic, and the art of reading omens in the flight of birds. But his talent was so great that the priests understood that the boy must go further. Thus began a journey that would take him along the roads of the ancient world, a pilgrimage that would transform him into the most powerful magician of his time. First, he was sent to Athens, the cradle of Hellenistic philosophy and esotericism. There he studied with the disciples of Pythagoras and the Orphists, learning the music of the spheres, the proportions of the soul, and the secret language of numbers. He then traveled to Egypt, where the wise men of Memphis instructed him in the mysteries of Isis and Osiris. It was there, according to the most ancient texts, that Cyprian first descended into a subterranean crypt, where initiates were subjected to tests of silence, darkness, and fear. It was said that whoever survived 3 nights under the gaze of the dead gods was reborn with their eyes open to the invisible. Cyprian was one of those few. Then he left for Babylon, land of stars and spells, where he learned to invoke the spirits of the air and engrave protective seals on stone and gold. There, he heard the names of ancient entities: Astaroth, Baal, Adramelech. He didn't worship them, he understood them, and that knowledge, so vast and so dangerous, transformed him. From Babylon, he traveled to the Caucasus Mountains, where Eastern Druids and Persian shamans instructed him in communion with the elements. He learned to read the secrets of fire, understand dreams, enter trance, and speak with the shadows of the forest. Over time, his knowledge became so profound that men began to fear him. They said that Cyprian could stop a storm with a glance, summon the dead, extinguish the light of day with a gesture. He was the supreme magician, the priest of all mysteries. At the age of 30, he returned to Antioch. But he was no longer the boy who had left. He was a man dressed in black, with eyes that seemed to contain the entire night sky. He built a stone tower on the outskirts of the city, and there he installed his observatory, his temple, and his laboratory. From that place, he contemplated the stars and the spirits with equal devotion. His name spread quickly. Kings and nobles sought him out for amulets, love spells, or visions of the future. He was wise, feared, and respected. But deep within him was a void. Knowledge gave him power, but not peace. Often, in the midst of his rituals, he felt something watching him from the depths of his own visions. A light he couldn't understand. He was a brilliant student, a curious and ambitious soul. At 7, he already knew the sacred formulas of the Babylonians, At 10, he mastered the secrets of the Egyptians. And at 15, it was said that he had traveled to the Caucasus Mountains, where the Druids taught him to communicate with the winds and invoke the spirits of the earth. His mind opened like an abyss, and the more he learned, the more he wanted to know. He traveled through Greece, Egypt, India, learning from philosophers, magicians, and priestesses. In the caves of Memphis, it is said that he drank from the chalice of silence and saw in the water his own destiny, the face of a man torn between light and darkness. Over time, his name became a legend. He was Cyprian the necromancer, the master who commanded the stars, the one who could speak to the dead and control storms. His rituals were feared and desired in equal measure. They say he possessed a grimoire, a book of forbidden power, where he recorded the most ancient spells, the ones that not even the priests of Isis dared to pronounce. That book, the famous book of Saint Cyprian, is still sought after and feared today. It is said that whoever reads it aloud, if their spirit is not pure, loses their soul instantly. But everything changed when he met Justina, a young Christian woman of great purity. A pagan nobleman in love with her came to Cyprian for help in winning her over. And Cyprian, confident of his power, accepted. He prepared his altars, lit black candles, and recited the forbidden names of the ancient demons. He summoned Asmodeus, the demon of desire, and sent him to tempt the girl. But something happened. When the infernal spirit tried to approach, he was repulsed by an invisible force. The air became dense, and a pure light immediately banished the demon. Cyprian, intrigued, tried again. This time he called upon Belial, the prince of corruption, and the same result was repeated. The demon was repulsed, powerless. Then, for the first time, Cyprian hesitated. What force could be greater than the demons? What power could subdue the spirits he himself had mastered for years? In his fury and desperation, he tried one last time, calling upon Lucifer, the bearer of the fallen light. And when the rebel angel appeared, covering his temple in fire and smoke, Cyprian commanded, "Go, Lord of the Abyss, and break that woman's will." But even Lucifer returned humiliated. With a booming voice and biting his mouth in fury, he said, "Cyprian, I can do nothing against her. Her faith protects her. Her God is stronger than we." The magician fell to his knees, devastated. The world he had built was crumbling. If the power of God could resist even the prince of hell, what good were his arts, his pacts, his sacrifices? That night, the magician who had spoken to the stars began to tremble like a child. He destroyed his altars, burned his talismans, and sought out Justina. He presented himself to her not as a sorcerer, but as a defeated man. He confessed everything: his history, his pride, his hunger for power. She, compassionately, spoke to him of forgiveness and faith. And Cyprian, in an act that changed his destiny, renounced magic and converted to Christianity. But the darkness isn't so easily erased. The demons he had served didn't forget him. They stalked him in his dreams, calling him by his true name, the one only they knew. "Cyprian, you belong to us," they said. "You were our scribe, our priest. You won't escape." And yet, they could not touch him. For the faith he had seen in Justina now burned in his own heart. Cyprian became a priest, then a bishop, and his words, once laden with incantations, were now prayers. But the Roman world did not forgive converts so easily. When persecutions against Christians broke out, Cyprian and Justina were arrested. They were taken before the governor of Antioch, who offered them their freedom if they renounced Christ. Cyprian, who had seen the demons face to face and felt the weight of hell on his shoulders, smiled calmly and said, "There is no chain heavier than the one I put on myself. Now I am free." The governor ordered their execution, and so, in the year 304, Cyprian and Justina were beheaded together. It is said that when their heads fell, a golden mist covered the place, and an inexplicable perfume filled the air. The Christians took their bodies and buried them as martyrs. But Cyprian's story did not end there, because his name continued to echo in the shadows. Many centuries later, witches and occultists continued to invoke him, believing he knew the secrets of both heaven and hell. In the villages of Europe, his figure became mingled with that of the wise sorcerer, the protector against curses, the one who knew the dark paths but no longer traveled them. It was said that his spirit appeared at crossroads, teaching men how to use knowledge without falling into perdition. And his famous book, the Book of Saint Cyprian, or The Sorcerer's Treasure, was copied, translated, and banned time and again. No one knows if any version preserves the wizard's original words, or if they are just legends added by others. But there is something disturbing. Everyone who has tried to destroy it says the book reappears, alone, intact, in some dark corner, as if it refuses to disappear, and worst of all, it really exists and is not a myth. The story of Cyprian is the story of human duality, the desire to know, to dominate, to challenge the divine, and the inevitable search for redemption. They say that even today, on certain nights, when the moon is dark and the temple bells are silent, a figure dressed in a black robe can be seen walking among the shadows, a book in his hands. And if you look closely, you will see that there is no evil on his face, but the peace of one who has looked into the abyss and learned to see beyond it. Peasants invoked him to ward off storms, to break curses, to heal illnesses of the soul and body. They called him the Witch Saint. And although the official church venerated him as a martyr, in the corners where faith and magic still mingled, his image took on a deeper, more ancient, more disturbing tone. In the monasteries of Toledo and Salamanca, monks spoke of a hidden book, a grimoire containing formulas of power, prayers that were not entirely Christian, and seals that seemed to move in the moonlight. That book, the Book of Saint Cyprian, became a legend. Some said that the saint himself had written it before his conversion, that it was his cursed inheritance, and that he had tried to destroy it before dying, without success. Others claimed that Cyprian himself, already converted, had rewritten it to use it in defense of good, transforming the spells into exorcism prayers and the pacts into protective prayers. But no one knew for sure what it contained. The book traveled from hand to hand as if it had a will of its own. Every century, a new version appeared, written in languages few could decipher: Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Germanic runes. Whoever possessed it, it was said, could master invisible forces or be lost forever. Rumors claimed that the grimoire would only open when the reader was worthy, and that if someone forced it, the letters would disappear like smoke, leaving only the smell of sulfur. In Northern Europe, especially Scandinavia, the book became a kind of peasant talisman. It was used by healers and white witches to ward off the evil eye, protect livestock, or invoke guardian spirits. And to the south, in Spanish and Portuguese villages, farmers consulted it before sowing or to ward off storms. It was said that a fragment of the book could be kept under the pillow to ward off nightmares. although some woke up screaming, claiming to have seen Cyprian himself standing beside their bed, silently watching them, a torch in one hand and a crucifix in the other. Over time, his cult diverged. For Christian mystics, Cyprian was a symbol of redemption, the man who had defeated the devil with the power of faith. For magicians, sorcerers, and alchemists, he was the mediator between two worlds, the wise man who had seen both sides of the truth and survived to tell the tale. Thus, on the border between the sacred and the profane, his figure became a bridge. Saint and sorcerer, martyr and necromancer, light and shadow in a single being. In Latin America, when the conquistadors brought their saints and superstitions with them, the name of Saint Cyprian found a new home. In Brazil, his cult blended with African traditions and the syncretism of popular religions. There, he became known as the protector of those who work with magic, the Saint of the Witches. In the Caribbean and the Andes, his image began to appear on altars covered in red and black candle, alongside symbols of power. And even today, on nights of the new moon, some invoke him to open paths, break spells, or protect themselves from the spirits that wander among the living. A curious and terrifying detail is that many claim that the Book of Cyprian cannot be burned. In the 17th century, a Spanish inquisitor named Alonso de Vergara confessed in his diary to having tried to destroy a copy found in the hands of a sorcerer from Toledo. He threw it into the fire 3 times, and 3 times the flames went out on their own. The next morning, the book appeared on his desk, covered in ash, but intact. Days later, the inquisitor died without a trace, and his house was abandoned. There are also more recent legends. In Portugal, an old manuscript from 1810 was found in an abandoned church. Inside, there were prayers interspersed with formulas for summoning spirits of the air and seals with unpronounceable names. The document ended with a warning written in faded ink. He who seeks power in these pages without purity of heart will lose his shadow at first dawn. And so, through the mists of the centuries, the myth of Saint Cyprian remains. Some pray to him, others fear him, others study him with respect. But they all agree on one thing: no one who has encountered his name is ever the same. Because Cyprian embodies what frightens man most: the idea that knowledge is neither good nor bad in itself, but rather depends on the purity of the soul that uses it. Only an echo remains, a name that vibrates between worlds: Saint Cyprian, the magician who became a saint, the saint who never stopped knowing magic.